First off, we have to go way back because I'm old. I started in Seattle, where Microsoft was. I was an electronic musician, teaching myself HTML. And this company, Microsoft, was also hiring anybody who knew anything about the internet at the time. And so,
how does your mission align today with the user testing mission?
we want to empower people to make better experiences in the world. It just so happens that my own personal mission is to get less shitty products out in the world.
Welcome to Growthmates. This is Syuma, Growth Advisor, previously Head of Growth Design at Mira. Here you can learn how companies like Dropbox, Adobe, Canva, Loom, and many more are building excellent products and growth culture. Get all episodes and a free playbook for growth teams on our brand new website, growthmates.club. I personally believe that one of the most important jobs of anyone who is creating a digital product is to make the first user experience smooth, intuitive, and memorable. For that, we need to provide users with a friendly assistance throughout the whole experience, beyond just the first session. Comment AI is a user assistance platform that exists for the sole purpose of helping users. It provides a user-centric alternative to traditional pop-ups and chatbots. The first thing that I love about Comment AI is their Copilot. This is an AI support agent that can use AI to answer questions, perform actions for the user, or show them how to do some complex things with ease. The second thing that is incredibly useful are nudges. This is a great alternative to annoying pop-ups. Instead of bombarding users with too many messages, you can show them a proactive and relevant message that guides them right to the action. And you can get all of this within Comment AI as a no-code platform that product, support, and marketing teams can use to influence user behavior in a positive way while respecting their needs. Thank you again, Comment AI, for supporting this episode of Growthmates. Hello, everyone. Hello, Jason. First of all, welcome to Hatch Conference, and then welcome to Growthmates. So happy to see you today in person. It's like very rare situation for Growthmates to talk to somebody who is like in the same place. So where is your like energy level at this point after your talk?
I will be honest, I have not eaten yet.
Oh my God, we need some food.
But no, they've got great croissants, so they took care of me. And I'm feeling good. I'm really energized. Everybody I've been talking to and see some of these other speakers.
Awesome.
Really good.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you here today. You just had an amazing talk. I hope we will not repeat the same things, but we will dive deeper into some angles of that. But before we start doing that, usually on Growthmates, I want to ask you about your personal story, about your background, and what is your mission and philosophy that you're driving today?
First off, we have to go way back because I'm old. And I started in Seattle, where Microsoft was. I was an electronic musician at the time. Unfortunately, in Seattle in the 90s, there was this band called Nirvana and this whole grunge movement. And so electronic music was not going to happen for me. But what was cool was that the internet was coming at the same time. And so we found like, wait a minute, we could do online collaboration, these web pages, we could promote the band. So over time, I was like pirated Photoshop and teaching myself HTML. And this company, Microsoft, was also hiring anybody who knew anything about the internet at the time. And so I might have fibbed a little bit, but had a lot of portfolio work. They saw something in me, and where they were willing to take a bet with all the piercings and the purple hair. And my first job was in a group called Information Services, and I sat next to this guy who had a job title of Human Factors Engineer. I'm like, I don't know what that is. What is that? And of course, what it became was usability engineer, UX researcher. But from the day one that I started at Microsoft, I had a researcher next to me. And so I didn't realize how fortunate I was at the time. But the human-centered design was my foundation. And so I spent the next 5 years expecting to get fired because, of course, I was a fraud. And however, they figured out like, hey, this kid knows what he's doing. I learned so much because I was going to get fired. all the time. Like my time at Microsoft is just to learn. My time's going to end, but if I can learn whatever I can while I'm here. And fortunately, there's so many smart people. I'm always the dumbest person in the room, which was amazing. And I figured I'd stay at Microsoft for a few years. And then 17 years later.
17 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
The whole discipline of UX was still evolving, emerging, being part of that, getting it established in a big corporate enterprise. Moved into design leadership, worked on some cool products, Office 365, Xbox, did some cool machine vision work, and then was kind of curious whether, am I only successful in that context? Is it just because I figured out how to do it at Microsoft, so kind of had to prove it to myself.
Repeating the success story somewhere else.
Hopefully.
Okay.
I was scared. I didn't know, but fortunately, I went down to LA. Colleague of mine's like, hey, let's build a practice at DirecTV. 3 years later, we went from a scrappy little 5-person team to a really robust, really nice design strategy practice, built 2 usability labs. It was quite impressive. So it was nice for me because it proved to myself, like, okay, my attitude towards developing teams, building a design culture, driving customer thinking to companies, it works. And so after that,
Here we are.
Yeah, here we are. I went to Ticketmaster, did kind of very similar things. And then this company, UserTesting, reached out. I had been a customer before. And as I was working for smaller and smaller companies, I was realizing I was having much more fun. And this company, to me, a 300-person company is like tiny.
It's a small one. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
That's right.
And you mentioned one thing, maybe you remember which one. How does your mission align today with the user testing mission?
Yeah. I mean, what's cool, I had thought I understood what a mission-driven company was, or a mission-driven team. Certainly at Xbox, it's like all about the fandom and getting gamers going, and I could get into that. I didn't realize what that meant until I went to user testing. Because fundamentally, they're like, we want to empower people to make better experiences in the world. It just so happens that my own personal mission is to get less shitty products out in the world and to actually work for a company that, obviously I'm not in marketing and PR, they don't let me talk like that, but to work for a company where you actually have so much in common with the mission. And so that's made all the difference.
Awesome. And it seems like it's a good place for that. So to make it more practical, realistic for everybody who is here today and everybody who will watch and listen to that, I wanted to discuss with you and reveal some myths about research. So there are a lot of them. Maybe we can just talk about 3. And I will tell you what is the myth that I'm aware of, or like I just figured out somehow. And we will try to think about how to reveal that, how to start doing research in the situation of uncertainty or doubts, etc.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I have some cards just to make it more structured. So the first one that I wanted to discuss with you, research takes a lot of time, it's expensive, and we basically don't have resources for that. So this is what I hear from early stage companies, from founders who just start building the idea, who are testing product market fit, like, hey, it's kind of hard to start doing that. So maybe there are some tips from you how to start doing the research if you have very, very, very limited amount of resources.
Yeah, no, we get that question all the time. First off, like traditionally, if you think about how we used to do research, it did take a long time. Like you built a lab, you brought people in, you had people behind the mirrors. By the time that you actually get the report generated, the business has already moved on.
Yeah.
So there's some fairness in how it used to be. I think with new technologies, new methods of being able to get quick feedback digitally, remotely. It's really changed the game dramatically. So of course there's digital tools, but I mean, when I talk to teams that are wanting with limited resources, there's basically two aspects of it. First, you got to find the people. Who can you talk to? And then what do you want to ask them? So in terms of finding the people, who do you have available? It can be is rudimentary of friends and family, coworkers, like identifying those, but starting to get creative about how can I find people to talk to expand, get more diverse perspectives. Talk to your salespeople. Hey, do you have like a great customer that's like willing to like, can I just join you on a prospect call and maybe ask a question or two as we're going there for that early discovery stuff? Maybe you have a whole list of customer lists and you can reach out to them. Would you be willing to, give us some feedback? People a lot of times worry about incentives. You would be surprised at how many people are willing. They're just glad to be asked.
Exactly.
Like a major brand or like a company saying, hey, would you be willing to give us feedback? Like sometimes it's not about the incentive. The incentive is to be heard. And so just being able to reach out. And of course, you can get much more, you can build your own panel, have people sign up. If you've got a website or a live product, throw a little intercept in there. Be like, hey, do you have 5 minutes to give us feedback? Right. So that's the how do you get people at without a huge investment. And then it's like, what do you want to ask them? And again, people think, well, it has to be, there's so many research methods. Which one do I use? Get really simple. My favorites are paper prototyping. When I was at Ticketmaster, and which was a very data-focused company, so doing anything qualitative was like new to them. We would build paper prototypes, walk through UI flows, get a box of donuts, sit in the cafeteria, get the HR department, others in there, and we get really valuable feedback. And it didn't cost a lot, but what it did is it started to show the value of it, and then you could start getting more investment in it. So for me, it's start small.
Yeah. What comes to my mind is the blocker. Like, what is the blocker of founders to do that, to go to these cafes and like take their product with them? Probably it's about some vulnerability. So it's very hard to show the thing you're working on, hard on, and to listen to the feedback, which is critical. But we need to change this mentality in order to make the product that will be the winner in your category. You need to be like accepting this critical feedback. And in terms of incentives, you just reminded me that at Mira, I've been the person who was starting doing research before we hired the first researcher. And everybody asked us, how do you find people who have never used Mira? How do you attract them? How do you incentivize them? And for many years, I think for 5 years, they didn't ask for anything. So they just came to interviews and they were willing to share feedback. They were willing to test the prototypes without any incentives.
Yep.
Which is like insane. And this is very nice. Sometimes we think like we need a budget, we need a lot of incentives, but
and I get it. It's intimidating, right? Like I said, there's all sorts of methods. There's like all these, maybe we'll talk about one of these myths about getting it wrong, and just give yourself a break. Like, don't overthink it. Try, experiment. Maybe you do make a mistake, you refine and you do it differently next time.
And about sales calls, I also heard from companies who are more like sales-led, they are treating each call, each demo session as a research opportunity.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, I don't know, do you believe in some sort of KPIs in order to prove the product market fit? You need to run 100 interviews. I think it just should be a natural practice. So founders who were like more or less successful and built great products. I remember Phil Vanderbroek, who built Dopt, and he was previously at Dropbox, and then design-led founder sort of built his company. He said, I was talking to around 5 to 10 people almost every day in the first several months or even half a year while building this first product from scratch. And these talks or conversations were not designed as like user testing or research. These were more discovery, sometimes demo sessions, sometimes sales sessions, but all of them were treated like as a research opportunity.
Yeah, and I love that. And particularly like for founders, right? Like the cost of making mistakes, whether it's product market fit or any of that, is so high. You know, like that you don't have a lot of second chances. And so these founders that come in with that attitude of using every opportunity to make sure that they're getting a broader perspective of things it's admirable. I love it. I love those guys.
Awesome. I think like this is connected to the second myth that we like to discuss. You mentioned the like cost of mistakes. So the myth is that research doesn't give any measurable impact, and it's very hard or even impossible to measure the ROI of investing into research. So how to quantify the value and ROI of doing research?
One of the things that has been, we were noticing now in the industry is that we're seeing a lot of cutbacks, and we're seeing research, even design, getting disproportionately laid off. What that tells me is that we haven't done a very good job of contextualizing the work that we do in terms that the business understands. And so it's only now that I think I hold myself accountable too. It's been kind of a gravy train, you know, like, hey, we can keep hiring more designers and all this stuff. We haven't built that habit and that practice of demonstrating the ROI. So some of the things that we're doing now is after projects, stopping and thinking, how can we quantify this value back in terms of what the business cares about? Typically, that's money. In some companies, it's actually more about culture. So we want to be customer first. We want our staff to feel like they've got this connection. Great. You've got employee engagement results. You know, you run a program to make sure that people understand their customers or they get firsthand experience. You can measure that. Hey, we moved this needle. If that's what the company cares about, and that's always the first step. What influences decision-making? What does the company care about? Typically, it's your things like sales rates, revenue, what have you. But then the next thing then is, particularly if it's money, look for the cost savings. So that's where I think research makes the biggest impact in terms of business savings. How much time did you save by not having to go back and rebuild the product because it was the wrong product? How much time did you speed up the development process because the developers, the design of it was a great design. It was validated before it was ever developed. And so an example of that is at UserTesting, we had a team. They were going to build a feature, really excited about it. It just so happened that we were doing a lot of surveys to find value of different features and pairing them against each other. We get the survey back and it's like, yeah, people value this feature functionality, but not in comparison to this other stuff. So we didn't do the project. I then went through and took the time to talk to the PM and the head engineer. If we were to have done that project, how long would that have taken us? With how many people? Back of the napkin, how much do we pay our engineers? How long did it take? I was able to calculate. I went back to my chief product officer. By the way, I just saved you $1.2 million. So it's that extra step of figuring out how can you do some calculation and then be able to articulate that back to the business. And we don't do it enough. Even myself, I've got a couple of cases where that's kind of our next step of, for every type of design or research that we do, take that extra step to like start figuring it out. Like, how can we better articulate what we do so that the business cares?
Awesome. And the method that you used for that to measure like the interest or value of this feature, what was that? What others can do? Like if they are thinking, all right, we have this roadmap, this set of features are already planned, but we are not sure if our users really need them or they're willing to pay for them. What is that method that they can apply?
What we like to use, it's called a max diff survey, so that it forces, how it works is you might describe a feature or functionality even better, get a designer to draw up the concept, and then you're shown two pairs of, hey, here's this feature functionality, here's this feature functionality. Which one do you prefer? And it repeats the test over and over and over in these pairings. And what it spits out is a ranked value of, hey, it's not saying that this thing isn't valuable. It's just not more important than this one. And so it's an amazingly powerful method for product prioritization and making sure you're spending your time.
Absolutely. I remember using this method for pricing and packaging initiatives as well. So you're trying to understand which features to pack in which plan and where people are willing to pay more or less for them. So I think this method can be paired with other surveys that are designed for willingness to pay, to analyze the willingness to pay.
Totally.
All right. This is very nice. Well, we are moving forward, but before we reveal the third myth, yesterday I've been facilitating the workshop on the topic of harmonizing user centricity and business impact. And what we actually uncovered with people while doing the exercise. So I tried to train the group on being more data informed in ideation, like what business metrics can inform our ideas, what qualitative metrics can inform our ideas. And what we uncovered is that there are plenty of business metrics like activation, aha moment, retention, conversion to paid, but there are not so many qualitative metrics we can keep in mind. Like there is a customer satisfaction score, there is an NPS score, and we were stuck. Like, do they have any other metrics to measure the UX? Because when they were designing some hypothesis, the impact that they tried to measure, for example, we want to improve the efficiency, we want to improve the time to value. It sounds like a qualitative metric should be there. So do you know any other good UX metrics that we can incorporate into our work in addition to customer satisfaction score and NPS, which probably everybody knows?
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of benchmarking methodologies, SuperQ, SUS+. We've got one proprietary one called a QX score that just comes back. And basically what that tries to do is it measures task completion. Mm-hmm. So how quickly and how well were they able to complete the task mm-hmm. with some more NPS-like mm-hmm. stuff. So it's kind of both. It's how did they were they able to do the task and how did they feel about it? Mm-hmm. That's a super nice one. That's the one we use internally in the case study I was just talking about.
And what is the name of that?
That one's called a QX score.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's multiple. I mean, really, there's a bunch of standardized tests. And the thing is to pick one that works best for you and then show the improvements over time. And then even what better than correlation to maybe a business unit that's performing better and tying that back to the bottom line.
We realized with the group why we need these metrics actually, because we started with the problem why companies are not investing enough into UX quality, because they cannot understand the ROI. We cannot quantify the value of improving efficiency, like decreasing complexity. Is there any measurable metrics there? But these things that you've mentioned can be introduced to be able to measure these things and then connect them to bigger business goals, because without this connection with money, in the end, we will not be heard and understood, unfortunately.
Yeah. The other trick that I will tell you, and it's really interesting. So one of my old head of design is now at a smaller company, and he's only got limited resources. But what he's doing, this is so brilliant, I wish I stole this, is he's picking specific teams. There's multiple teams they can support, and he's purposely supporting one or two teams, and he's tracking their performance of the products that they're doing. And what's happening is that those teams that have research support and are actually getting the feedback, they're outperforming. And so now he's able to show, look, these teams are doing research, and look at the metrics that they're doing, and look at their team health. And there's all these things that he's building in case, because he's got the comparison. Here's the baseline when we don't do anything. Mm. Here's the teams that actually are doing the research. And
this is beautiful.
Isn't that brilliant?
We need this as a benchmark. We need to put it on paper, print that, send to everybody, maybe
it
also on the podcast. So the last but not the least, of course, the myth that we'd like to discuss. Imagining that we already passed the stage that we didn't have any research, now we have this research group, like maybe one person is doing that or maybe a team. So the myth, it's risky to democratize research as it can become a weapon in the wrong hands. Maybe it happens in bigger companies where there is a research department and there are product people who should be close to customers, but they are sort of not allowed to be close to them. So who, in your opinion, should be involved in research, and how do you think about this democratization?
Yeah, the myth is true, because the way that you stated that is that you can weaponize research. You can. It's just like you can weaponize data. So that is absolutely true. Who should be involved in research? Anybody who really cares about delivering a service that thrills their customers. That could be your head of engineering. That could be your QA person. Of course, it's awesome. I mean, designers and researchers, like, we're oriented that way anyways, but honestly, it's around anybody who ultimately wants to understand. If I'm going to spend my nights coding the solution, I want to make sure that it just lights up somebody's life. That is a great candidate, because what that's telling you is when they actually do some research or they talk to customers, they're not doing it from a place of bias where, but this is my solution, I don't want, critical feedback on it. It's an earnest mindset of like, no, tell me, be critical with me because I want to make sure it is. So honestly, it can be everyone. It is great to have a professional at the table, or, I did this actually before the event. I just asked ChatGPT, like, what's the best way to prioritize my backlog? What are some biases that what kind of questions should I ask? What should I avoid asking? It was really solid. Like, it was really great feedback. Having some professional to be like, look, it's awesome. Kate, go out and ask these questions. Here's who you should talk to. Here's some things to watch out for. This is an example of a leading question. It's not rocket science. Like, that makes so much sense. Don't do that. Hey, it's probably not a good idea to let them know you're the designer, because people sometimes they want to be critical with you. Some basic things. So a professional or online, or if you have a vendor that like has a bunch of resources of like, hey, here's how to do this right.
Yeah. So imagining that we would like to democratize research, meaning carefully educate people how to do that. So ideally, not just one user researcher is doing like user interviews, but other people like can do user testing, moderated, unmoderated. So maybe one action, what anyone in the team can do to be closer to customers. One thing that engineers, product managers, designers can do from one side. And another side is like what leadership need to do to support this movement of democratization.
Yeah. I think I'm more interested in like mindsets. So one thing that everyone can do is just stop for a minute and think, what assumptions am I making?
Mm-hmm.
And pick one of those assumptions and be like, ooh, which one's the riskiest? And then how can I figure out how to reduce that risk and make sure that reduce the assumptions that I make? That's a simple just thought exercise. Hey, whether it's a marketing campaign or some piece of collateral or a product feature, let's take a breath here. What assumptions are we making? And then how could we make that non-assumption? Let's really find out and just pick one and just start going. On the other side, from a leadership perspective, what I would love is that the question gets asked more often, how confident are you in that decision?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we've got this great new feature, or we're going to run this new campaign. What I'd love to hear is, okay, how confident? One better than that? So what did customers say when you showed it to them? Like just building that vernacular. We actually have some customers, I can't remember the name, I'm terrible with names. And all the very first question that's asked at any type of product review, what's the QX score on that? Like they built it into the fabric of how they think, which is shorthand for what did customers think?
This is next level.
Isn't it? I mean, That's the vision, you know. So the start is for leaders. Ask that question: how confident are you? And even better, what did customers think when you
I would
them
even swap this, like first what customers said and then how confident are you? Because confidence can come from gut feeling, you know how it works.
Fair.
Sometimes it's fine, like intuition is a great decision-making element for designers as well. If it's trained well already by customers' insights and data insights. And when it comes to qualitative aspect, right? So a lot of folks on the like decision-making stage, they are making decisions by just informing them by data. But data can tell us what is happening, but only users can tell us why, right? And this confidence, or is it working or not, only customers can tell us, right? So starting from these questions is very, very important. So I would like to maybe leverage this opportunity to ask if anybody has any questions to Jason, to me, on the topic of user research. Okay, we need the microphone.
Okay, so thank you so much for this session. It was so useful, and I want to touch base on the last thing you guys discussed. I would argue that actually for democratizing research, we need first to democratize user centricity in the company, actually the mindset you just mentioned. And I would like just to simply ask, like, what was the one thing, if you can pick, that you were taking from one company to another to do so? Just like one method or tool that you would argue was most successful.
To drive customer centricity?
Yeah, like the mindset, to grow the mindset of customer centricity, to kind of push everyone to think about the customers first before even doing any research, because I think that comes first.
Yeah, I mean, the most powerful tool that I've had in my experience is video of somebody using your product in real life, whether they're thrilled or whether they're breaking down in tears because they can't figure out how to book an online appointment. That it's not data, it's the heart, right? It moves. But when you see somebody and the emotion, that is just so powerful. And I use it again and again and again. And it's sometimes it takes some time. And obviously you've got like really smart leaders and they may be very data focused and like, yeah, that's just one person. I don't care. When you hear a customer story, when you see somebody struggling to like use the product, that gets through. And so that's really how I use it to open up the door into much broader programs.
Okay, amazing. Thank you.
Same thing. I agree with that. Absolutely. I would add on top of that. So first, if there is like very, very low willingness to even join and participate in any research interviews showing these videos that you came up with like on your testing, but next step is to invite them to be there, like to see in real life what is happening. And after several sessions, they realize like, first, I really want to join more sessions like that. Second, we need to change so many things in our product, otherwise we will not survive. So again, you said like what we can do before we do the research, but actually we need to do the research and show and then involve them into these discussions. Yeah. Any other questions before?
Thanks for the talk. It was enjoying. I wanted to ask, because we spoke a lot about why it is important to democratize the research, to have, say at the table from the design, why this is so important, et cetera, et cetera. But Jason, you have said something at the beginning of your talk that when at the time when you came to user testing, you find that a lot of people were doing sloppy research and things like that. What happens when we got this user centricity mentality and slight push from leadership to do some user research? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we don't have fully equipped team to do that. And as we know today, it's at the same time a curse and a bless to have the opportunity to find out quickly everything about research. And I've seen many times people start doing all the things they've read, and quickly they start to provide sloppy research and everything, and the founders are not that stupid to not to figure out that something is wrong there. You can make you believe it is.
Yeah, actually act on faulty data.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask maybe us to think about or to tell us something about how to start from the small steps when we have a chance to start thinking about user centricity and the research.
Yeah, that's a very timely. I was just talking to somebody about this. So start small, but also when you consider where you want to apply it, there's a couple things that you might want to factor into it. Some folks are like, hey, that we can measure the ROI and it's really big and we can make a huge impact. So that's where we're going to focus. High risk, very visible. It could go wrong. You guys, you have to have like a self-awareness that this is new to us and we're not experts. Pick something that is visible and measurable, but not super high risk, right? The other thing and factor that folks don't tend to think about is when you select a project or a team, will they be an awesome advocate and champion? Are they trusted? Are they respected in an organization? If they're like, look at me, we just did this and we had these great results. Or are they somebody that sits in the shadows? Like you're wanting to pick projects that are going to, these are seeds that you're dropping into your organization. And you want to make sure, one, they're in fertile ground, but also that it's going to propagate and you've got somebody that's willing. This is what I love, like PMs, marketing people, like I find the most vibrant ones. That's who I target. I want to work for them because I know they're going to be such advocates and they're really going to help celebrate and start driving it. Is that helpful? That makes sense.
And then when you have these advocates, you could have a forum like Voice of the Customer, for example. It was something at Mira every 2 weeks, I think, or once a month in the end, like collection of insights, like these video shorts about customers and their experience, like research people present in design, engineering, everybody who is doing like some kind of research. And this is called Voice of the Customer, which is beautiful. Yeah. So, I love that. Yeah, I think this is just a takeaway. Maybe starting small, but getting to the point when you can have such a forum and level of like centricity to the user. So we are in time. We are wrapping up. So maybe, Jason, last piece of advice that you'd like to give to the audience.
Don't be intimidated. Start small. Be scrappy. Ask for help. Be self-aware. Know your biases so that, when you actually are asking questions, you're listening because you really want to improve the experience for your customers or your users. I don't know what, I just rattle off 5. Anyways, those are the ones that are really top of mind for me. And
the last one for me, like wear yourself in shoes of a customer a bit more often. So that really helps.
Amen.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, Jason. That was amazing talk. And yeah.
Thank you, Kate. This was great.
Cool.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the show on growthmates.club and get free playbook with frameworks and insights. If you find this valuable, please share it with your friends and colleagues and subscribe to the show on your favorite platforms to get new episodes. Let's keep growing together.